Hello future welders, we're back here at AmeriArc Welding Academy. We are shooting another great video. Today's video is going to be on D1.1 4G position, overhead position on 1-inch plate. We're going to tack this baby up and let's start welding. So here's a brief illustration of how we're going to attack this weld. All right, as you can see, why I became a welder, I'm not a artist, you know, in this magnitude, but here's our backer plate. Here is our 1-inch, okay? This is our 1-inch beveled plate, all right? All right? Our first pass that we're gonna put is our root pass. Our root pass, ideally, we're looking to break down the edges of each plate and fuse into the backer plate, all right? This is our main purpose of our root pass, to basically tie everything in together. It is our first initial bonding of all the material together, all right? Next thing, I'm gonna do another weave pass right in there, all right? I may do another weave pass in there. Now we're starting to get kind of wide, all right? As you can see, it's starting to widen up, right? Starting to widen up. So because we're starting to widen up, all right, I don't wanna take that welding rod, that 1/8 70/18 welding rod, and overcompensate, okay? So we're gonna do stringer beads on the inside. Now that we're starting to get wide, I'm gonna split this and do 2 stringer beads on the inside. Boom, all right? That way we're not weaving too much material. We're not trying to bring too much material from the left bevel to the right bevel. Now, as you can see, because this is a bevel, we're starting to widen out even more. Okay? Now I'm going to put 3 stringers. All right? That's where we're at. Here's what's important. The important part are these edges. These edges right here, all right? I don't want to overfill my plate. The edges are the most important part because that's going to help with my overall presentation, my overall final presentation of the weld, okay? I'm going to use my edges as my guide, all right? So now what we're going to do, I'm going to erase this, all right? I'm going to erase this. Now what we're going to do is, because we have these edges here, we're gonna run our first bead covering this edge. Boom. All right? We're gonna run our first bead covering this edge. Now we're gonna tie our next bead in, right here. We're gonna tie our next bead in. We always want our beads to overlap by 1/3, okay? Now our final pass, our final bead will go there, and that should be our finished profile of our test plate. That is our finished profile. You have a 4-stringer bead cap. Hopefully this is our plan on how we're gonna execute this, and hopefully it works out that way, but it pretty much should, okay? Let's go and start welding. Now that we have our piece all tacked up, we're going to be using 70/18 X caliber 1/8 welding rod. We are going to use no power tools on this. We're only going to use hand tools, a chipping hammer and a wire brush. This is 1-inch plate. We're going to get this tacked up in an overhead 4G position and start welding. Let's go. So now that our piece is tacked up, we're gonna get ready to start welding. And the big thing about doing overhead, right? We're doing a 4G position. The big thing about doing overhead is rod positioning. Rod position is everything. You want to keep your rod with the forward angle the whole time. So the whole time I'm welding, my rod will have an angle like this, all right? The reason why you have a forward angle with your rod is because you get to push the slag kind of out the way. So the arc pushes the slag out the way. I don't like to keep a perfect 90-degree angle, straight vertical angle, because sometimes I notice that the slag kind of floods around the weld puddle. So we're gonna strike up on our runoff plate, and we're gonna end on our runoff plate, all right? Keep a very tight arc the whole time you get started. So let's go. So as you notice, I strike up on my runoff plate. I'm nice and hot because basically I'm welding all three materials together. I'm welding my backer bar, I'm welding both bevels together with the backer bar. I just go from a left and right angle, keeping a very sharp, a very tight, keeping a very tight arc. All right, I keep my rod tight to the steel. It's almost like I just kind of drag it against the steel. And once I start to see it gets a little too hot for me, if I have to kind of whip out the puddle to allow it to freeze, I will. So my rod is getting short, I'm gonna change rods. Take my chipping hammer. I'm gonna clean this up. The whole time you like to clean, keep your weld clean the whole time. The whole time you're welding, try to keep it clean. Clean off the slag. Every time you stop, hit it with your hand brush to try to keep it clean throughout the whole weld. And as you can see, I use my runoff plate so I can build this up out here. I'll probably come off around 1 inch. So now that we have our first root pass in, right? That's our first pass. We have the root pass in. Nice and clean, we like it. We ran it at around 120 amps. And now we're gonna keep going. Remember, we're gonna strike up on our runoff plate and we're gonna end on our runoff plate. If we have to change rods somewhere in the middle, not a problem. Just make sure that you strike up ahead and drag back. Big thing is rod angle. Another thing is, as I'm welding, I'm actually pushing this rod in the side bevel of each plate, all right? I'm giving a little side pressure, all right? So I'm keeping my arc really tight, and I'm really putting a lot of upward and side pressure every time I sweep across the middle, all right? I hit this right side of this bevel plate, this plate on your right, and I'm pushing into the side wall. I sweep back, I'm pushing into the left side wall of the plate. This is my second pass after my root, all right? Pretty clean, keep fusing into my sidewalls. Nice clean weld bead. I start on my runoff plate, I end on my runoff plate, and we're gonna fill this baby out. This test is not a difficult test. If you can do flat, you can do overhead. The big misconception is that guys think that they have to do something different. You're pretty much dragging. I'm dragging this rod the whole time, and I'm just sweeping from bevel to bevel, all right? The middle will take care of itself. Constantly, I worry about fusing into my bevel walls, all right? So I can have a nice tie-in into my bevel walls. Keep your arc tight, and keep your rod angle the same throughout the whole weld. All right, as long as you do that, once the plate starts to heat up, we're gonna bump the heat down, but pretty much everything is the same throughout the whole weld. Let's start. So I just had to take a second to bump my heat down. I just lowered my heat 5 amps, all right? This plate is like scorching hot now. I noticed that the puddles started to get a little more wet, a little more liquidy, so I wanted to kind of gain control. Always remember when welding, if you want to kind of stiffen up that puddle, you have to lower the heat. If you are welding and that puddle's a little too clay-like, then you have to bump the heat up. It's gonna kind of make the puddle wet out a little more. So if you check this out, I just did a bunch of weave passes. We're getting a little wide now, right? So you never wanna take 70-18 and like weave it too many times, like weave it across too wide. So now we're gonna get ready to go into stringers. So now we bump the heat down. I let the plate cool off for maybe a second or two. All right, we're gonna go into stringers. We're gonna split this weave pass that we just did in half. We're gonna do a stringer to the left and a stringer to the right. So what a stringer is, for people who are unfamiliar with the welding terminology, right? A stringer is a much more narrow, concentrated, smaller bead opposed to weaving from left to right, all right? We're gonna do 2 narrow, skinny beads, tie them in nicely, and That way we can, we won't have to worry about trapping any slag or porosity because we're taking this welding rod and stretching it from left to right too much, all right? So we're gonna stay a little more concentrated in one area from the left side to the right side, and we're gonna start welding. Always striking up on my runoff plate. And if you look at what I'm doing, I'm keeping a very tight arc. I'm just dragging. I'm pretty much just dragging. I'm splitting that weave bead in half. All right, I'm going from the bevel wall to the middle of this weave bead, that previous bead. Just split it in half, kind of just dragging this stringer along. No complicated movement at all. Just keeping that arc tight. You don't want to let any, remember you're fighting gravity, so you don't want to let any air up underneath that rod because it will drip back on you. What I like about doing the stringer beads is I can kind of finish one stringer bead out with one rod. So if you pay attention towards the end, right, occasionally you'll see me kind of like whip out of the puddle and then come back. The purpose of that is because I start to see the puddle that plate is heating up and the puddle is trying to like either drip on me or kind of fall back. I kind of whip out for a second to allow it to freeze and then reapply more material and continue that bead on. So you can check out my first stringer bead. If you notice, my first stringer bead is right here to the left, all right? I'm gonna apply my next bead right over to the right. I'm gonna apply this bead right to the right, and we're gonna start stacking stringers. So now I'm laying my next stringer bead in there. Again, nice and tight. I'm always making sure that I tie into this bevel wall. Tie into the bevel wall and tie into my previous stringer. Keeping my rod angle the same. Those are my two stringer beads laid in there. And we're gonna fill this baby out. We're gonna just put stringers and start filling this baby and make it nice and flush before we start capping. So now that we're filled out, we are ready to cap. Actually took about 5-10 minute break to let the plate cool down a little bit so I could have full control of the weld puddle as I'm welding. As you can see, this is a major important part. Make sure before you cap that you're flush. Make sure that you're nice and flush before you cap. As you can see, I always leave my edges. My edges are my guide. That's my guide to make sure that I have a nice straight cap. The first pass I'm gonna apply is right here. I'm gonna put the center of my rod right on this bevel edge and just walk it straight across, all right? We're gonna cap this baby and see what it looks like at the end. As you can see, I put this first bead here. Now that I let this plate cool off, I can see that I have full control of this weld puddle now. It's behaving just the way I want it to behave. All I'm doing is sliding this rod right across. All right? Keeping that arc tight. Using that bevel edge as a guide. And look how this peels right off. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. That's my first pass. All right. Wow, in doing that, I can feel the slag just peeling off. Just peeling off. That came out really nice. All right. If you have nice heat and you're moving at a nice pace, I mean, you shouldn't have any issues. That slag should just peel off like a banana peel. All right? Stringers nice and tied into one another. Let's finish it up and check it out. All right, there you have it, folks. We're all done. Let's take this down and let's check it out. Ooh, that baby's hot. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, future welders. I like it. This is our finished product right here. Pretty much straight beads. You can see I have 4 stringers. The most important thing is tie those stringers in together. Make sure you have an aesthetically pleasing product. So now if you take this for an employer and he gives you this test, he's thoroughly impressed with you, all right? These are some of the things that you can learn here at AmeriArc Welding Academy. Check out our other videos. Please make sure you like and subscribe. It could really help us out. Thank you and see you on the next one.